does he just do his own thing? Do I just press the little red button and I say, I don't know, action, I guess? And then he goes and acts beautifully?
Welcome to the Film Riot Podcast. I'm Ryan Conley, and today we have Joe Penna on the show, which I'm really excited to have on the show. He's another filmmaker that started off in YouTube. You might know him as Mystery Guitar Man. He made really incredible and creative stuff, but has made the leap into full-on feature films out in LA. His first feature had Mads Mikkelsen in it, so that's kind of incredible with his film Arctic. And now he's working on a brand new film called Stowaway with Kendrick and Toni Collette. So he's jumping from amazing project to amazing project. He's an incredibly talented guy and very open and honest about the process and his journey to get there. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, I want to thank our sponsor, which is MusicBed. With MusicBed, you can find the perfect song for your films with a highly curated roster featuring hundreds of artists, bands, and composers. And as a Film Riot listener, you can get your first month of subscription free or 20% off a single song purchase just by entering the promo code FilmRiot when you do check it out. So go to musicbed.com or go to filmriot.com, go to the episode page for this podcast episode, and you'll find links for everything in there. But now I'm going to shut up and get into it with Joe. The thing that I'm most interested, because you have a really awesome trajectory, just watching, I've watched you, for years and years, definitely since the beginning of, me doing what I was doing on YouTube for sure.
Oh my God.
And just watching you go from there to where you are right now is pretty amazing. And I would love to know more about, what that path has been like for you now on your second feature film, which you just wrapped shooting, right?
Right. Yeah. Crazy, man. I had no clue that you were watching my stuff. I had been watching your stuff and I was like, that's what I want to be doing. Not what I'm doing now.
And now you're doing features and I'm trying.
I was kind of sort of forced to move outside of YouTube with what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had the YouTube channel. I started it back in 2006. And back then I got to like number 12 most subscribed ever. And then I left for about a year to just work. At the time I was still in college. I was like, am I going to be a surgeon or what is this YouTube thing? Just kind of sort of trying to figure out where I was going to end up going with my life.
Yeah.
So after I left and started working around the Boston area, started doing a lot of like commercials and music videos as a production assistant, wrapping cables and grabbing coffee. I eventually decided, that's what I want to do. And in that year that I had left, all of my friends had amassed like thousands and thousands more subscribers than I had. And I felt like I was a little behind. So I said, forget about it. Let's try to make it happen. Let's try to make this YouTube thing go because now all of them are getting paid and I'm not.
Wait, what year was that around?
That was like 2008, early 2008. A friend of mine, Philip DeFranco, was, I had been talking to him, hadn't talked to him for a few months at that point. They were doing like a YouTuber meetup kind of thing. And I was like, in real life? This is weird. But let's give it a go, I guess. And that YouTuber meetup was when we all started talking about like, guys, this is like doable. Like some people are making like $1,000 a month doing this.
My
like
God.
$1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. So, after that, I was like, I'm going to give this a go. My dad gave me like a year to try to figure it out. My school, too, was, I had this scholarship at my school, and they were like, take 2 semesters off. And I was like, wow, great. And so I have 2 semesters to try to figure out how to make this thing work. Otherwise, I'll go back to being a doctor.
Right. Yeah. So then you just dove like head first right into your YouTube work?
Yeah, exactly. I moved to LA. I was, went to Vegas and I like played enough poker to be able to get enough money for security deposit of the cheapest apartment in LA that I could find. Really sketchy place. I was, sleeping on the floor, stealing my neighbor's Wi-Fi. I went to a soup kitchen at a certain point. I was just trying to make this YouTube thing work.
Yeah.
And eventually I made Guitar Impossible, which was like 2 million views overnight, which proved to me, okay, I can do this. I can do this full time.
Yeah. So how long until you started working on more narrative projects, just moving from what you were doing with your YouTube space and really having the amazing audience and work you had there, and then transitioning that into more of your narrative work? Where did that set in?
That was I forget exactly when I decided to try something narrative, but at that point the YouTube channel had blown up and it was doing really well. And I think it was kind of like a cool thing to do back then, was to have like a little short film-ish kind of thing before music videos started.
Yeah.
Lady Gaga started that trend, I believe. So I was like, I could do that. So I made one of those, and then the little narrative part started getting longer and longer. And especially when I started working with other creators and other just artists and who just wanted music videos for me to direct. You know, I pitched this huge, like, short film, a huge idea to this guy. He's like, yeah. When does the music start? I was like, oh, I can't be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then it becomes a music video. You know, I was like, I can't be burdening these poor artists with my narrative things. Maybe I want to do a short film just on its own.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had been getting money from YouTube, so that's kind of sort of what the YouTube channel became, was getting money from these brand deals and commercials that I was doing, and then just spending it all on, you know, living in LA and a couple employees that I had at the time, but then also, you know, making narrative short films.
So when you really dove into YouTube, did you not know yet that you wanted to go the narrative route? Was that something you discovered over time, or you knew that early on?
No, it's definitely something that I discovered over time. I didn't even know that I wanted to do YouTube at the beginning, you know, and then eventually that became sort of my obsession, and then eventually narrative became my obsession. I never thought that I was going to be a director or, you know, even write things. I was like, my mom's a writer. I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then, you know, your first film you also wrote, correct?
Yeah, I co-wrote it. I wrote a screenplay way back in the day by myself. A couple of them, 2 or 3 screenplays by myself. And I was having a hard time with like some dialogue stuff. And at the time, you know, the guy who had just been doing some behind the scenes for me eventually became my editor, eventually became my partner, and then my writing partner. His name is Ryan Morrison, and we wrote a screenplay. This was when the YouTube channel then started not working out. You know, the YouTube channel was starting to go away because they needed longer things, you know, and things more often. And it became difficult for me because I had been focused on stop motion and animation and VFX, a lot of things that are difficult to do long and difficult to do often.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I need to jump ship here. So we wrote a screenplay called Stowaway and sent it to our agents at the time, and they tried to make it happen, and it didn't really work out, so it was too expensive for a first-time filmmaker.
Sure.
I said, okay, well, then let's write something cheaper. So we wrote another one called On Mars, which was meant to be in the same world as Stowaway, just, you know, years and years and years into the future, about this guy whose plane crashes stranded on Mars. So we sent it to our agents, and they said, okay, definitely cheaper than the previous one, but maybe you should watch the trailer to Ridley Scott's new film that's coming out soon called The Martian.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were like, okay, well, we gotta change that around. So we did. We changed the setting. At first, we were considering, you know, do we shoot it in a desert? Do we shoot it underwater? You know, and then he pulled up some pictures of Iceland, and I said, that's it. That's the one. We gotta go there. After I fought him very, very hard on a Brazilian guy shooting a movie in Iceland, we decided to go Iceland.
Yeah, man, it worked out. The setting was such a huge factor in the loneliness and also just the intensity, that constant dread that anything could happen at any moment.
Yeah, it's you know, the most desolate place on earth. You know, for a desert, it almost feels like you should either die right away, within like days, or that you just walk out of it. You know? Yeah.
And there's something about the cold that, at least for me, is a lot more scary.
It is. Yeah. I mean, for me especially, yeah. As a guy who's cold all the time, even in LA.
Right.
But it is. You're right. It's And it also allows you, to become a robot. And that's what we needed, right? Was a place where he could just be solely focused on survival and nothing else.
Yeah.
And be stripped away of his humanity.
Yeah, exactly. That was so effective. But at that point, when you sent Stowaway your screenplay and everything to your agents originally, so you already had agents. Did you have managers as well?
Yeah, I had my wife was my manager for a long time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. At first, we fought that. We were like, no, we shouldn't be working together. But then she worked on one brand deal for me that had an extra zero than my usual brand deals, and I said, if we need to stop dating in order for you to stay my manager, that's better for me. No, yeah, we still were dating at the time, and then she was my manager. She started a company called Big Frame, and was managing a lot of people, and then eventually, Byron Ashley, who came up under her, was my manager. But I was still looking for like a film and TV person.
Yeah.
Whereas Big Frame was mostly focused on web. So yeah, I didn't have that.
How did you come across your agents? Was that just through what you were doing on YouTube?
It was, yeah. I had done one of my first short films was with which one was that actually? Oh my gosh, my mind is being destroyed with the post-production of this new film.
I can imagine.
That was with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. So after that, they were like, oh, okay, cool. This kid is doing some cool stuff online. So I found a TV/ the YouTube agent at a company called CAA here in LA. And that was great. And eventually we got a film person added to the team. And he was the guy who was trying to make Stowaway and then eventually Arctic work.
That's amazing, man. So once you got Arctic to the place of, here's a script, it takes place in this setting, we've shifted it over to this. How many drafts did you end up going through before you took a set? I guess what I'm wondering is how you got from, point A of here's the script of, Mars, and that's not going to work, so let's switch things up, to, you have Mads on it and this thing is really happening.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always find that a screenplay is this amoeba-like thing that it's constantly evolving to.
Yeah.
What? People ask me all the time, like, how many drafts did you have to go through? I'm like, I don't know. Thousands, hundreds, billions.
It's also like, what do you consider a new draft?
Exactly.
Because sometimes you change a little bit. Sometimes it's a scene. Sometimes it's an overhaul.
Yeah, man. Sometimes it's just like you change a word on it because during rehearsals, Matt said something cool. Or didn't say something, so it's like delete this. It's they before every day they pass out sides, which are basically just the scenes that you shoot in that day, printed in like a half-size sheet of paper. And those sides, I would constantly the night before constantly be tweaking them because it's the first thing that Mads is gonna put his eyes on. So I want that to be. Besides, we've already shot a bunch of scenes, and then maybe that can change some scenes later, but. So yeah, dozens. I'd say dozens and dozens. It's a constantly evolving thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So once you had the script to a place where you felt comfortable to start pitching it, did you then do rounds of pitching to studios, or what came next?
With Stowaway, yeah, we pitched to production companies, and eventually to some studios. We got some interest, but we got maybe 19 or 20 different places that passed on Stowaway. They said no thanks. We have something similar. Or we're not really fond of the story here, or maybe get some actor attached to it, and then we'll be interested. And that kind of took the wind out of the agency's sail, especially this one agent that I had at the time. And then with Arctic, I was like, okay, guys, like this is gonna be the one. Go push. And then that agent wasn't pushing it anymore. It was kind of over it. It was like, maybe it's the guys, to the point where I was like,
right.
Well, Ryan, you and I have to make this happen. So we went out and we found a producer who had ties to Iceland, and we found another executive producer who knew Mads. We put them together, got Mads somewhat interested. And at that point, actually right before we got Mads interested, my agent was leaving the agency and was becoming a manager and said, hey, come with me. I know you're looking for a manager. And I said, oh, okay, cool. Maybe. Let me talk to Ryan. And he said, well, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I don't think that you should bring Ryan along. I said, well, he's been writing with me. He's been editing with me on the YouTube channel for a long time. I think you should. He's like, he's slowing you down. This Arctic movie is never going to happen. Come with me. I'll put you into like season 5, episode 3 of some series, and then you're going to become a TV director, and that's like, you're a great director, you're no good as a writer, or maybe we'll pair you with someone better. And it just happened that I had it on speakerphone, and Ryan was next to me the whole time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
that's
I
awkward.
held my tongue, and I said, well, thank you for your opinion. I disagree. We're going to keep trying to make this Arctic thing happen.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, best of luck. Truthfully, best of luck. I hope that you make it happen. So I think that gave us the drive to be like, well, let's prove him wrong, you know?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah, exactly. And so we made that happen. We started pushing, found the producers, and the producers found some other producers, found the financiers, and was without the agency's help, to the point where afterwards we went back to the agency and said, guys, we need a new film agent. And eventually we found a new film agent there, Matt Martin, who is amazing and is definitely pulled his weight when we were trying to get Stowaway going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. So you did pretty much all the legwork to get Arctic going on your own and then pulled the agency in.
Yeah, exactly. The way that someone described it to me was like, you have a Ferrari, but you don't have a driver's license. Like, CA is one of the better agencies, if not the top agency here in LA. It's just they will focus on people whose careers are doing well.
Sure.
And or it really depends on who your agent is in there. You know, like, you might have a small boutique agency with an agent who doesn't care about you, or you might be in the biggest agency in Los Angeles with an agent who doesn't care about you also, or vice versa. You know?
Right.
So we just had to find the right person in there. That was the issue. So once we did, then it started working out really well for us in there.
And how did you prep for Arctic? Once this is happening, what was your prep for that like? Because it was such a, very little dialogue, definitely a slow burn sort of film, not like a slow film, but a slow burn intentionally film, which worked perfectly for it. But that always stresses me out, like the slow burn stuff. Were you conscious of that? Was that like a point of stress for you, of you were just committing to, telling this specific story, like next to no dialogue, one actor?
Yeah, while we were trying to get Arctic going, there were definitely financiers who said, you're going to do another pass at it, right? Like, you're going to give them a backstory, you're going to show the crash, right? Like, otherwise we can't do this.
There's going to be an explosion at some point, right?
Yeah, right? And yeah, it was definitely, all the prep that happened was before the movie was a go, because I don't think the movie would have been a go had I not been able to pull up my laptop and say, here's every single frame of the movie. I can't draw to save my life, but I have these picture boards that I put together, that I photoshopped into the movie, and I would just spend an hour going through every single shot of the movie and kind of like spell the movie out, shot for shot for shot for shot. And, I had something like 200 gigabytes worth of images that I could find.
Wow.
Full of images and videos and things like that of Iceland and cutting things together. And in fact, when Mads got on Skype with me, he asked me about the first scene. It was supposed to be a 15-minute phone call. It turned out to be 3 hours of us talking, because I just shared my desktop with him and we started talking about the film in that way. And we went over the
amazing.
Film like beat by beat by beat. And I wonder if he would have said yes to the movie had I not done that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's preparation meets, opportunity sort of a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to prepare yourself as much as possible for you to be able to get lucky.
And how did you find working with somebody like him? I'm a huge fan of his, so it just seems insanely intimidating that is, your lead in your first film.
Yeah. At first I was a bit like, he is great in every film that he does, including films that are not great films, but he's great in them.
Yes.
So that must mean that he's not listening to bad direction. So does he listen to any direction? Was my question. Was like, does he just do his own thing? Do I just press the little red button and I say, I don't know, action, I guess? And then he goes and acts beautifully? Or is this a conversation? Is this, is there a push and pull here, as is what I'm used to? And I found that, yeah, that was the case. After every single take, his eyes would just go up to me and be like, "What did you think?" And I'm like, "Whoa, he cares about what I think." After
Yeah.
the first 2 hours of the day, I was like, "Whoa, great," but I pictured it a little bit more like this or a little bit more like that. He's like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's do it again." And then he would do it perfectly how I pictured it. Or we'd find something in between what he thought and I thought, purposefully. I didn't tell him the backstory of this character, and he didn't tell me the backstory that he invented for it. So whenever something wouldn't jive with me, I'd say that didn't jive with me because of that. And then he'd change it around in some way that he would either come up with or I would come up with. And we'd find something that worked for both of us, which I think worked for this being such an open film. As you're watching it, you get to decide, why is he doing this? Why is he saying this? Why is he doing that? And because it worked for two vastly different backstories, mine and his, eventually we told each other our backstories, and they were completely different. Because it worked for both of those, then it works for multiple gradations in between.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And was there anything that you took away from that experience that you took to your second film as far as working with an actor as a director?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like every single project of mine, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This I can use like this, or I shouldn't do this anymore, or I should do this more like that. Every single thing that I do, every day of my life, I feel like I'm constantly thinking about, how do I speak to actors? How do I speak to heads of the department? What does the color red mean in a film? Usually, like that kind of thing. I'm constantly watching tutorials online, even things that I know for a fact, like basic things. They're like, this is what a C-stand is. This is how you open a C-stand.
Right.
Like, I was watching that the other day, and I was like, why am I doing this? Oh, because still, you can still learn, because even the basics, if you learn a different tweak, that might, even though you have the rest of your path already, that might tweak the rest of your path.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Was there something that you wished you knew going in when dealing with an actor of that, well, any actor, not just an actor of that caliber?
Yeah, going into my first film, I wish that I knew how much people would have trusted me from the beginning. Even though I am a first-time director, I was the director of the film. And still, I was constantly surprised that people cared about what I thought. You always think that, you're hiring a 55-year-old cinematographer who's been shooting longer than you've been alive.
Right.
So, clearly he's not going to care about what I think. But they did. Both of those cinematographers that I've worked with, these actors that have Academy Award nominations or are incredibly well regarded, Best Actor in Cannes, 2 years prior, he cared about what I thought. And that's something that you have to remember as a director, is you're being hired because of your taste. And everyone has a taste. Like my little son, he's 4 years old. He has taste also. He likes some things other than this color rather than that color. So, it's so much of it is technical, and so much of it is about, being able to just manage production. But a lot of it is just what you think. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to pause right there so we can again thank MusicBed, because it does suck to get bogged down in the editing process when you're trying to track down a soundtrack for your film. We all know how hard it is to find the right music. I've been there plenty of times, talked about it on the show plenty of times, and so has the team at MusicBed. In fact, that's the entire reason why they built the platform that they built. They've made it easier than ever for you to find the song you're looking for with an intuitive and easy to use browser and search amazing indie artists and bands and incredible composers. The roster is growing every day too, with tens of thousands of songs ranging from cinematic and electronic to indie rock and hip hop, and with either single song licenses or subscriptions that give you unlimited downloads. There's something really for every type of filmmaker. So go create a free account and learn more at musicbed.com. And like I said before, they're giving you 1 month of subscription free or 20% off a single song purchase. Just enter that promo code FilmRiot when you check out. But now let's get right back into it with Joe. So after this film, it was very well received from my perspective. Really good reviews. It seemed like it did extremely well for you, and obviously it did, because then you got Stowaway set up after that. Did that happen after Arctic's release and everything, or was that something that was going on behind the scenes while in post? Maybe.
Yeah, a lot of that was going on behind the scenes. In post, we had our foreign sales agency. Basically, they're the people who, in order to get a film financed, you usually go to Germany and you say, hey, instead of buying this later for 200,000 or 800,000 or whatever, depends on the film, right? Do you want to buy this now for half the price before we make the film and take a gamble on it?
Right.
So that's how you get some of the money to actually make the film, right? So they were doing that for Arctic, and they said, do you have anything else? Because we're watching the rough cuts and now the fine cuts of Arctic, and we love it. We'd love to see what else you have. So we were like, oh, yeah, there was a Stowaway thing that we wrote a little while back and had won some awards and things like that. They're like, oh, yeah, let us read it. So then they read it, had a couple notes on the script, and they said, once we got Arctic into Cannes, they said, stay the whole time. We're going to stay there and try to sell some of Stowaway. We started sending it out to different actors and trying to find our lead and trying to figure out, like, oh, who did you write it for versus who do we think we can actually get, So while the film was premiering at Cannes and it sold there for distribution for Arctic, I stayed for an extra week with Ryan, and we tried to also sell Arctic Stowaway, to try to get that going at the same time.
Gotcha. Yeah. And as far as sending to different actors, is that just the agency is shipping the script off to them?
Exactly, yeah. So that's when, CA really stepped up for us. And they put they call it a covering agent, somebody from, I'm not talent, I don't have a talent agent, so I'm not an actor basically. So they get an agent who works with talent to attached to a film.
Right.
And they start to package a film. And there's issues with packaging right now all over Hollywood. But that's for a whole nother discussion, whole nother 2-hour-long podcast.
Yeah.
So they started working on, okay, so this is who you wrote it for, so we'll send it to this person, and then we'll send it to that person, and then maybe this pairing. And you're trying to find, actors who can command the budget of a film or who could be interested in a film. You're always trying to reach higher than what you think you can get. And then eventually you go to people who are more realistic.
Yeah, and it's insane. You have two of my favorite actors back to back. You got Mads Mikkelsen and then Toni Collette in Stowaway, which is just insane. It was just insane.
Like I said, you reach way higher than you think you're going to get at first. So, Anna, I think, was, if not the first person that I forget exactly, but we had written it with Anna in mind because it's a character that has a lot of drama to her, but also needs to pull off a perfect, impeccable comedic timing. And there are not many actresses who can do that out there. Not many actors just in general, not people at all who can't do that. But Anna has a great, 50-50 where she can pull that off well.
Yeah.
So Anna was attached to the film first, and once she got attached, we sent it to Toni Collette. And Toni was like, oh, great, I've always wanted to work with Anna. And I met with Anna, but Toni at the time was in Australia, so she gave me a call. And we started talking over the film, and she's like, frankly, I would have passed on this had I not seen Arctic, because that film was so well done. I trust you, and let's do it. Both of the actresses said that, and I was like, well, shoot, maybe I should write better. So that they don't pass on it without seeing the other film.
That's amazing. So had they happened to have seen the film already, or the film was sent along with the script to show you as a director?
Yeah, that's it. They sent them special links because the film wasn't even released it was just releasing. So we sent them super watermarked. Toni Collette,
Gotcha.
all over it. So that kind of thing where it's this is this guy's movie. It played at Cannes. Look, it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes at the time. So clearly this is a thing that you should be working on.
Man, that's great. And what are those calls? Because that's something I definitely have not done yet, is connecting to have a meeting with talent of that caliber for the project in question. What are those like for the filmmaker like myself who hasn't done that yet? What would you tell them to prep them for something like that?
It's surprising how nervous everybody is,
even the actor?
Oh my God. It was you have an Academy Award. Why are you nervous about this? I don't understand.
That's crazy.
I should be nervous about this. Yeah, everyone is kind of because you wouldn't have done the call unless everyone loves the script. They just pass. Sometimes they send a nice note and they're like, hey, thank you very much. Really love the script, but I'm doing something else. Or it's through their agency. They send a note and say no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. Or they just literally pass and then you don't get anything. You just get sorry, they passed. And that doesn't make you feel great. But that's okay because they,
Yeah.
they get all it's all incoming for those actors, right?
Sure.
They read script after script after script after script, and man, a lot of them are not great. A lot of scripts are it's really hard finding a great script, you know? So if you either find one or you write one yourself that you're in love with, likely for you, you're writing it yourself, you're trying to make your short film, and then eventually that into a feature, then, you got to send them stuff, and that's something that your agency does or that you do yourself. It's like, here is a link to a short film that I made that is a proof of concept. That's super helpful. And then by the time that you actually meet and that you're actually talking to this person, you already know a lot about each other's intentions. You just want to confirm that this person isn't crazy, So,
right.
Yeah, and either that or the one that I had with Mads, he didn't. He just read the script and nothing else. He purposefully didn't want to go to look at my YouTube channel or to see my other short films that I had done. He was like, I just want to talk to the guy. So you got to be ready for either kind of conversation. Just like a dinner that I had with Anna that was like, hey, we're both normal people. Okay, cool. Maybe what do you think about the script? Or what about this? What about that? Okay, cool. How are you going to do this scene? All right, awesome. Great. This guy knows what he's talking about. I trust them. Versus the other side of things where you have to go beat by beat.
Yeah, an hour-long Skype call.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, something that you got to be ready for either way. You got to remember, as an actor, you're putting it out on the line. If you're crying, you're not just pushing a button on your back and all of a sudden you start crying. You actually have to be feeling those emotions as a great actor. They're actually putting themselves through something where they're remembering something or they're actually picturing themselves into that situation, or maybe their method, and they have to be upset all day long if they have an upset scene at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So there's so much trust that you have to put on a director to be like, that was great, or you know what, that was a little too much, or instead, I know that the script says that you have this giant speech, but maybe you just look at him, and to have somebody as a guiding light. And yeah, people ask me all the time are you afraid to work with these insane actors that you've gotten for your films? Daniel Day Kim, oh my God,
yes,
I've been watching him for so long. Toni Collette, thinking about Mads, thinking about Anna. We got Shamir Anderson for Stowaway, who's I'm really excited about. He had such a great tape that he sent in for the role. And are you worried about working with those kinds of caliber actors? And I'm like, frankly, I'm worried about the opposite. I'm worried about an actor who doesn't have a vision, doesn't have a direction, because it's about finding the halfway point between what you think and what they think.
Yeah. So it's a really strong, intense collaboration throughout for you then.
Definitely, yeah. And I try to keep it as light as I can. Even sometimes there are some really, really tough scenes, and you can either approach it where everybody stays in the mood, and you try to shoot it out as quickly as possible because people are going to tap out really soon when they have to cry and cry and cry and cry. Or you do the opposite. And it's up to you as the director to figure out what is best for this actor. Do they need to stay in it? Or do they need me to talk about the Netflix glass-blowing competition in between them crying,
Right. How do you land on that? How do you figure out what they need? Is it a conversation with them where you're actually asking them, or is it just something you're perceiving?
It's a lot that's happening because you're just meeting that person, unless you're, David O. Russell and you just work with that person over and over and over again.
Right.
You're just meeting that actor and you're just working with them for the first time. So, going into Stowaway, I had a week. For some of the actors, even less than a week of rehearsal. So I'm like, I have to give it a shot and I have to learn. And usually the first few days, there's a few adjustments. It's like, oh, okay, so this actor is best by take 4 or 5 because then they're on a roll. This other actor is best, take 1 out of the gates is their best take every time. So let's get their close-up first, and then we move on to the other actor second. And it's all of this logistical stuff that is driving the creativity.
Right. Are you filming those rehearsals?
The rehearsals, no. It's usually around the table. It's usually for the spaceship that it was already built or mostly built. We were like, let's go sit in the spaceship. If this had been real, then you would have been training in a spaceship on Earth for 2 or 3 years. So move anything that you need to move, make it yours. So sometimes it was us trying to beat these scenes into submission. And sometimes I was like, go sit in your infirmary for an hour and just move things around until you're happy.
Yeah.
And then, you sit there, and then sometimes they're like, what does this thing do? And sometimes and sometimes you look back at the production designer, and then sometimes the production designer looks back at the set dresser, and the set dresser looks at the PA, and then no one knows. But it looks cool. But and sometimes you're like, it's also a matter of that, People are very afraid of sometimes saying, I don't know, or like, how loud should I get? Sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Let's see, and that sometimes, if you don't do it every time, sometimes that can actually inspire confidence, because then you're not the person who's just bullshitting, how loud. Oh, you're going to be like this loud. That sometimes is not helpful.
Sure.
You do enough things like that to build trust with an actor, and then by day 3 or 4, you're like, okay, I know how to speak their language. They know how to speak mine.
And is that day 3 or 4 of rehearsal, or day 3 or 4 of the shoot?
It's usually the shoot, because it's rehearsals are just like no actor is giving their all during rehearsal.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to like understand the entirety of the script. So sometimes the actors are a little afraid to give their all during rehearsal, because they're like, well, I might do something that is totally going to be like, oh, well, later in the script, she's crying about the same thing, so she should at least be a little upset about it now,
Right.
And you just start learning, sometimes a big no-no, for example, is to give actors line readings. It's like, well, you should go to the store. Like, you don't say that for the majority of actors. But sometimes with Mads, I was just like, how about you try like this? Or how about you try like that? The few lines that he had, because he actually preferred them. So it's a matter of figuring out each other's language, especially body language,
So you would give Mads line reads?
Sometimes, yeah. He asked for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's like, I get it, that you're trying to speak around what it is, but just tell me, like, how would you say it? I'm like, I'd say it like this. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I could do that.
That's great. So it seems like he was pretty easy to work with then.
Mads was one of the better actors I've ever worked with in my life. I mean, I saw him like carrying gear at a certain point. Like, he was in every frame of that film, so there was no breaks for him ever. Usually as an actor, it's kind of boring because you have to sit in your trailer for 3 hours and it's like, hey, sorry, we've been behind, now we're ready for you. But for him, it's like, all right, we're on, go, act all day.
Yeah.
So it was really tiring.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I assume Stowaway was a much bigger budget than Arctic was.
Yeah, it was about 5 times bigger, yeah.
Was it oddly similar, or was it like a totally different beast with this different budget in place?
We had way more prep time, which was so nice. With Arctic, it was like Mads said yes on a Wednesday, and I was there on a Friday, and we were shooting 3 weeks later. Whereas before Matt said yes, we didn't even know whether I was going to be doing this anymore. But with Stowaway, I flew to Germany several times. We location scouted. We scouted other places around the world. There was a lot of preparation. I had this Xbox controller, and they built like a game version of some of the action sequences, and we're able to shoot previs in that way.
Amazing.
Where, I can play a little game of it, which was super, super helpful. And yeah, there was a lot more prep time, which is really helpful. But, still, there is never any movie that wouldn't beg for another day of shooting or wouldn't beg for a little bit more money. It doesn't matter if you have like a $200 million movie or if you are just doing yourself for like $80,000. That's what it is. Otherwise, if you have too much money, my cinematographer, again, he had been shooting since 1984. Had been a Steadicam operator since, years after that. One of the first Steadicams was his. And I was like, have you ever been in a movie that had too much money? And he said, only once in my entire career. And that was like the third one of a series.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man, that's insane. And during production, did you see a difference, though? Was there like, with the producers and everything, was there a little more politics involved to get what you needed? Like, did you feel like you had more freedom in the lower budget than you did in the larger budget, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I felt like the opposite, actually.
Really?
In the lower budget, because it was also my first film. So I don't know if it's because it was lower budget or because it was my first film. There's a lot of people kind of hovering, making sure that I was going to be doing a good job. Whereas in the second one, because I think it's because I didn't go from like Arctic to like Jurassic World 17 or whatever.
Right.
Then I think that would have had that issue. I had heard from a lot of friends here in Los Angeles who had done that. Like they wish they had done a few mid-tier projects before going into a big project like that.
Yeah.
Because then they're just kind of sort of traffic cop on a huge tentpole production. Because there's so many steps between like, yeah, we'll just do that VFX shot ourselves, or here, Mads, can you carry this? Versus, like $200 million productions. Or less even,
Yeah.
So there's so many steps in between that I get it. People hired you for your creative vision and for your taste only for those large productions, and not necessarily for it to be exactly what you picture.
Sure. Yeah, man, that makes a lot of sense. But you finished production on Stowaway, and now you're in post-production. How long have you been in post-production?
Well, we did the same thing with Arctic. We knew that I couldn't get any pickups because, it can't like be like, oh, okay, yeah, we have 2 weeks from now or like 2 months from now. We know that we need a few pickups with Mads in the snow. It's like, well, then it's spring and no, so we were editing as we were going along. So I did the same thing with Stowaway. So we had been editing every single day, which is really helpful as we were shooting. So by the end of it, we're relatively certain that we don't need like pickup days,
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, trying to figure out how long we're actually going to need later. So really true post-production, though, has been about 5 weeks or so.
Right. And what do you find your function is mainly in post-production as a director?
Well, it's still a relatively low-budget film, so I'm still doing like music temps and sound work and mocking up some VFX with my editor. Thankfully, both of us had been coming from the YouTube channel where we did all the VFX ourselves.
Is Ryan editing Stowaway as well?
He is, yeah. So I'm actually in his bedroom right now. So we're editing from his house. We didn't want to like go and waste the money to be like in a studio or like a post-production house or something quite yet. We feel like that money can be best used with like an extra day of Foley or an extra day of an orchestra or something,
Sure.
As opposed to just us being more comfortable somewhere.
Yeah, I was almost wondering if it was more comfortable at, that familiar environment. It's just his house.
Right, yeah. That means that we can like step away and then keep working, and then after that, he just goes to sleep and I amble home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So have you haven't gotten into sound or VFX or anything yet, or is that happening simultaneously?
That is, yeah. It's nice that it's for us to hit our deadline, we have to do VFX simultaneously. So they're doing something called post-viz now. There's so many VFX in the film that they're just doing like a crappy version of the VFX now, just so that we can see something in the edit. So it's not just a person looking at a black screen or a blue screen or something. It's actually like, because I wanted to build everything that they touched, but the ship is so large on the exterior of it that it didn't make sense to build some of those, and then once we figured it out that like, you know what, it doesn't make sense as a miniature, it actually makes more sense as VFX. So that's what they're doing now, is to kind of line up all the shots and track all the shots and give it to us in like a very unfinished state.
Yeah, man, that's so great. And just the path that you've been on is really inspiring and amazing. I know I've heard from a few filmmaker YouTubers that just look at you as like a beacon of hope of, it's possible, Yeah. So it's just been amazing to see what you're accomplishing on the insanely high level that you're accomplishing it. So just a billion congratulations on all of that. And I really can't wait to see Stowaway. It comes out next year, right?
Yeah, sometime next year. We'll see. We'll finish it by May. So if there is some sort of festival in the south of France that happens to be going on at the time, we'll see. We'll submit to those.
Right.
Otherwise, if there's another festival somewhere in Italy or maybe in Canada, I don't know, just making these up. If they're interested, festival run first, and then we'll see where the film goes from there. But it does seem like it's going to be a theatrical release as opposed to
that's great,
an SVOD, like a Netflix or Amazon kind of thing. We don't know, but it seems like that's where it's headed.
Sure.
Which is great, at least for me. I get to show the film in a way where I'd like to see. But, I do want to thank you, man, because a lot of the inspiration that I got for, trying to go into narrative. And so much of what I learned was because I saw what you guys were doing.
Oh, that's amazing.
And like I think about Indie Mogul, and I think about all of these like other YouTube things that were like even lessons from the screenplay, all of those kinds of things that I keep learning so much by seeing other people doing things. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be where I am without you guys.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, man. That's incredible. That's super awesome to hear. Hopefully I'm not too far behind you. Fingers crossed.
Not at all, man. You guys got so much, I hopefully people are now beginning to see, because with Arctic, they didn't even know that I had a YouTube channel until I was in Iceland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Nowadays it's like, oh, you're a YouTuber. Like Joe Penna, maybe it's possible for others. I was speaking to the Corridor Digital guys. They have a project. You have a project. Like, hopefully now there's trust that's being built in the media space where a lot of these YouTube channels can become directors and producers and definitely actors so far, but more than that.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, I would love to see it just blown up like that more and more and more, and open the doors off that. And because there definitely was a stigma back in the day, but I agree with what you're saying. It feels like that's starting to sort of slip away.
I hope so for sure.
But once Stowaway comes out, I'd love to have you back on when we can, when it's out in the public and people have seen it, and we can talk more specifically about it.
For sure, man. That's a date.
Awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
cool.
man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
So that's it for today. Big thank you to Joe for taking the time to chat with us. Of course, go to filmriot.com/podcast. Go to the episode page for this episode, and you could find more about Joe and some of his other work, including some of his other short films and videos from his channel. Of course, you can find me online at twitter.com/Ryan_Conley. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.